All right. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Margaret Kelliher. I'm the Director of Public Works for the City of Minneapolis. With 52 inches of snow to date, 4 snow emergencies in 6 weeks, and a whole heck of a lot of snow plowed to the curb, we have decided, and I have decided and declared that starting tomorrow at 9 p.m., because of public safety issues, we are going to go to one-sided parking in Minneapolis. So 9 p.m. tomorrow night, Thursday, January 26th. Today I'm joined here by Chief Tyner of the Minneapolis Fire Department, who's been instrumental in helping us look at the conditions, as well as Ibrahima, Diop, who is Chief Operations Officer for the Minneapolis Public School District, and we've been talking to the schools about the buses as well, and Martin Scheerer, who is the Chief of EMS for Hennepin Healthcare. And in conversations with all of our public safety partners, we've determined that these restrictions are necessary at this point. We're here to support these other organizations in how we are taking care of our streets, and that is why we are going to move to the one-sided restrictions. Again, they will begin 9 p.m. on Thursday, January 26th. Vehicles can no longer park on the even side of streets in Minneapolis on non-snow emergency routes. That is very important, and that is actually reflected as well in this poster behind me. Some streets may have some additional signage due to restrictions on those streets. The important part here is that people who are parking their vehicle need to follow the signage that is posted. So we need people to comply. Generally, this is the rule. Ticketing and towing will begin after 9 p.m. tomorrow, Thursday, January 26th. Our crews, and I'm joined by a number of folks from Public Works, that if after the press conference we need more information, our crews have been working very, very hard to clear the streets. We had hoped for maybe a little warmer weather, some sunshine that would have given us some ability to get some more widening on the streets. That did not happen in the last 10 days. We are about as wide as we can get right now, and so making the streets passable, particularly for public safety vehicles, is important. The other part is really there's no warm temperatures coming in sight for a while, and we think that that is another factor in going to one-sided parking now. I'm going to just acknowledge this is inconvenient for people, and we understand that. We hope that people can work together to make sure that people are safe and that people can, get groceries to their residences and things like that. But for the overall public safety, if there's a fire, if someone has a heart attack, we need to have the streets in a way that large vehicles can move down them. And of course, we do not want to have kids sitting on school buses for long periods of time. So I want to say a sincere thanks to everyone who's been complying with our snow emergencies, for now having to move their cars to one-sided parking. We very much appreciate the partnership with the residents of Minneapolis and visitors to Minneapolis. I also want to thank our crews, both our folks in our maintenance crew and our traffic department. They both have been doing a lot of work already and will continue to do that work to both keep the streets as clear as possible and the alleys for people, and then the other part is signing the streets to make sure that it's very clear where parking can and cannot happen. I'm going to next turn it over to Chief Tyner for a few words, and our other partners are going to speak, and then I will come back to take questions and hopefully provide answers.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Bryan Tyner. I am Fire Chief for the Minneapolis Fire Department. And I have advocated for and fully support this decision to go to one-sided parking in the interest of public safety, in the interest of keeping you and your neighbors safe. When there's an emergency, whether it be a fire or a medical emergency, seconds matter, and certainly minutes matter. The amount of snow that we've had, combined with two-sided parking has made many of these side streets impassable for our fire rigs and for other vehicles also. And so in the interest of public safety, in the interest of providing the best level of service that we can to you and your neighbors, I fully support the decision to go to one-sided parking. I also acknowledge that it is inconvenient, but I believe it will make the city safer for everyone and allow us to be able to respond to emergencies when they come up. So thank you. With that, I will introduce Chief Martin Scheerer from Hennepin County EMS.
Thanks, Chief. I'm Martin Scheerer from Hennepin County EMS. So we provide EMS service to the city of Minneapolis and many other cities in Hennepin County. So, we have the same challenge that the fire department does, maybe even a little bit more. Our trucks, believe it or not, are just as wide. The ambulances are as wide as the fire trucks. As you can see in this picture back here, that makes it really challenging to get there. We often respond with police and fire as well. And so when the fire trucks are on scene, for example, here, and we come from a different direction, we have a hard time getting to the location where we're at. So we've advocated for the snow emergency to help our crews get out there. We've had some significant issues in trying to get to all the different addresses, and some of the side streets are really a challenge for us. So I want to thank the city of Minneapolis for helping us out, and thank the citizens and the team here that works to plow the streets. They do a great job. And if I could also ask everyone if they can maybe shovel their walks. We bring our stretchers most often up to the scene, and it's difficult to navigate the stretchers who have little tiny wheels through all the snow to get up there. So if we have a nice clear path to the house, that helps our team with the stretchers and transport people out. So it's really important if we could do this. We appreciate everyone's cooperation. We know it's not a great thing to do. My family lives in Minneapolis, and we know what it's like. So, but thank you for your cooperation. And now I'll let Ibrahima Jobs from Minneapolis Schools bring us back here. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Chief Scheerer. Thank you everyone for being here. My name is Ibrahima Diop, and I'm the Senior Officer for Finance and Operations for the Minneapolis Public Schools. I first want to say thank you to the City of Minneapolis for actually including Minneapolis Public Schools in this effort, because as you know, we do have buses all over town any given day of the week, Monday through Friday. And so we're saying thank you then to the city for providing safety for our students in terms of transportation, and making it easier for our drivers to navigate the city streets. We have to give our drivers a great thanks, because they've been doing a wonderful job since November with narrowed streets. We do know that with the both sides, parking on both sides of the street with mounds of snow on every corner, it makes it challenging for our drivers to navigate. And quite frankly, if a bus is stuck, that means students would be coming late to school. And that is not good for good learning. And we do feel that their safety, the safety of the students on those buses, will be enhanced by this measure. So we fully support it, and look forward to working with the city and with the fire department and EMS to making sure that we share any information to making sure that this is working for us. And so, as Margaret said, thank you very much for your patience in this. We know that this may be an inconvenience, but it is an inconvenience to make it better for all of us. So thank you very much today, and if there are any questions later on, we'll field that.
I should mention one other thing. This will stay in place until April 1st, which is the end of our snow season, but if we happen to get significant warming earlier than that, and feel that in talking with our partners that we have enough passage, we can take it off earlier. So that the outside side of this is April 1st, and it could come off sooner. So I'll open it up to questions. So the question was, when was the last time the city had to go to one-sided parking restrictions? I believe it was 2019. It happened in late February of 2019. Yeah, so the question was about our snow removal budget, and at 52 inches, we're doing okay. We have the budget to clear the streets, to put down, we do try to do limited salt, but we do have sand, and we are continuing to keep up on that. I will say that the city council and the mayor have always been very understanding that we live in a snowy climate. And so some years we are under our budget and other years we are above the budget. And we have never had a problem being able to pay for our services.
Okay, I'll start. So I can say that every winter we see some difference in our response times. It's not a real significant difference, but obviously travel is slower in winter conditions. And so have we seen a change in response time? Yes, we have seen a slight change in response time, but our average response time is 5:29 for the entire year. Our goal is to get there in 5 minutes or less, so we're a little bit above that. But yes, it is true that in winter conditions, our response time is just a little bit slower due to the driving conditions.
Yeah, Marty from Hennepin EMS. Great question. So I did look at January 3rd. We had a pretty significant snow on January 3rd, and our average response time that day went up about 1 minute and 20 seconds. So, you know, a little bit, not terrible, but it was significant for us. We have a similar response time to Bryan. About 7 minutes is our average response time, and those days it jumped up a little bit. But there was a couple calls, though, where it was difficult to get to, and so that's a lot of what we're talking about here is, you know, the driving might be slower on snowy days, but the actual access to the residents that we're trying to get to gets a little bit cumbersome sometimes when there's that. Especially like I mentioned, when we have police and fire and EMS all responding at the same time, the road gets really crowded. And usually police and fire get there a minute or two before EMS arrives, so we have a hard time finding space to park even. And then if the school bus is on the street, it adds a little more complexity to the whole issue as well. So, but thank you, good question.
Thank you for the question. For the district, we have key performance indicators, KPIs, that are tied to transportation, and they are in terms of on-time drop-off and pickup, and time spent on the bus. And we do know that when conditions are not favorable, those KPIs are poorly affected. The time spent on the bus is elongated, and the drop-off and pickup time is not that accurate. So we do see impacts of that. And as I said, I haven't said it yet, I live in Minneapolis and we love being here. Living here in Minneapolis, my kids catch the bus, and sometimes I hear it from them as to the time spent on the bus and or the bus being stuck. So thank you very much for the question. The question is about how have we canceled routes because of the conditions, or can you repeat the question, please? I would answer the first question. I have the Director of Transportation that may have more detail on that, on the second question. And I would say that for us, the time that the bus is if a bus is stuck, it would reverberate through the system all the way to the classroom. So I do know that we just are impacted every time we have streets that are tight or narrow. Lisa, do you have anything to add to that? Mm-hmm.
I always get to share the really good news. On the big... my name is Lisa Beck, and I'm the Executive Director of Transportation. So it varies day to day, but for example, the big snow event we had that lasted over multiple days, We were home for the first 2 days and then out. That morning we had 19 buses that were stuck in the snow that had to be rescued by our mechanics and the tow trucks to get them out. So that's the extreme. It's a record, actually. Normally on an icy, snowy day, we'll have 2 or 3, but on a big snow event, we've had as many as 19.
Right. Yeah. So let me start with ice-rutted streets from the city point of view. This the storm that we last had was a bit of a more unusual storm in that it started and did not stop for a while. The consistency of the snow changed during that storm. It started out fairly light. It then is what we call became concrete snow very quickly. Anyone who's been out shoveling knows it. It became very content water heavy. And when that happens, and dependent on just when the snow is coming down and people driving on their streets, we are plowing all the time. So I just want to say that there is no bus or bus barn or barn somewhere where we say, plow drivers, start your engines and plow the streets when a snow emergency starts. A snow emergency is a parking emergency situation. What we are doing and our crews are doing is the moment snow is starting to accumulate, we have full crews out plowing. And they are plowing the main arterials first and the snow emergency routes first. And there's reasons for that because a lot of our, our partners are using those streets, including Metro Transit, and we want to keep those as clear as possible. Then we move to residential streets. But by the time we move to residential streets, in this case, that heavy content concrete snow was starting to bond already with the roadway. And I will say we have, and this has been in place for a long time in Minneapolis, our standard in the winter is not bare pavement. Our standard is a snow-covered street. This is unusual, though, with the level of rutting out there. And so we've been doing our very best. Joe Powman's crews from Transportation Maintenance and Repair have been out every single day. We've done a significant amount of voluntary overtime already to try to break up this, real ice-covered street situation. Alleys are even more so, and we need the alleys clear for delivery of services like trash and recycling pickup as well. And so we're going to continue to work on this. So it really has to do with condition and type of snow, how much driving is done on that snow ahead of time, and then the temps that come after a storm. And so although we haven't been unusually, or normally cold yet, we've been cold enough that it's created the situation for the ice ruts on the streets. I'm going to turn back to the Director of Transportation from MPS.
So what's led up to this point is the same as you experience in your cars, right? Our buses run on the streets every day, all the time, on every one of the types of roads that she mentioned. So the situations for that, any given bus driver depends on where they are. In my neighborhood, it's very tight. As you can imagine, a bus can't just be in the middle of a block and start backing up. Or if it does, it's not a safe situation. On top of we have 261 buses and 200 small vehicles that run our kids to school every day. On top of those on our city streets, we also have hundreds and hundreds of buses for other schools, non-charters, pubs. So a bus that you see on the street may be ours, it may be someone else, and they're dealing with the situation that they're in. Up until this point, I'm sure they made choices to try to get through that street, and luckily this change in our parking will make a tremendous difference to us running on time as well as the safety. Buses are not as heavy as you think. They don't really actually travel very well on winter snow, especially if they don't have kids on them. They're very light. So inclines, ice, ruts, they all affect us. By getting more room on the streets, it's going to give them a little bit more room to navigate around the problems that may be ruts or ice. So I think there'll be a dramatic change after tomorrow night.
So I think at the root of your question is, could calling a snow emergency, which is a parking tool, have prevented what we see today earlier? And I think we actually were on about 3 days of snow when that snow ended. What we try to do is do our very best through looking at a number of weather models, looking at measurements throughout the city to see where we're at. Because in Minneapolis, other cities call a snow emergency or parking restrictions at a much lower number of inches. If we have 4 inches of snow, you can almost guarantee when we feel that we can get out there and get the best snow plowing done and get the cars moved, we're going to call that snow emergency. When it's between 3 and 4, it's a bit more of a judgment call. I think we have called at every snow event this year, 4 so far in 2023. We had 2 in the beginning of this snow season already, I think. And we have called every time to be able to clear those streets. As I said, there are crews plowing the streets from the beginning. And so I do not believe that had we called when we were in the height of snow coming down on that first day that we were going to get significantly clearer. We were already plowing those arterials and main snow emergency routes. Yeah, so the question was about, do we have suggestions as the city for people who need alternatives, particularly in very dense areas of the city? And I will say we've already started to do some of this work in Stevens Square. The Stevens Square neighborhood was one that was identified very early on by the fire department, and our crews went out and posted it one-sided parking, did additional cleaning, and we could actually provide a before and after picture of that for all of you to show you what our crews were able to get done there. I would say that we do not have a specific plan for people, but people should work with their neighbors on this, because we do know that there can be places in neighborhoods that have parking spaces available. It takes a lot of work, though, because often if it's a business, they need to work with the people parking their cars there. If there's another snow event, to move the cars out of there. But I do know that there are both individual residents and renters who may have spaces available that could help their neighbors out, and working with businesses, but it really is up to those individuals and blocks to work that out. Yeah. Yeah. So your question is about both, there are going to be places where people are going to have to park further away from their residence or their business to be able to go into work or to go home at night. And, is there leniency? What I would say is we're trying to give people as much notice as possible here by having this press conference midday on Wednesday. We're not starting until 9 p.m. tomorrow night. We know that people need a little bit of time to adjust to this schedule of parking, or the way that things are going to happen, parking on the odd side of the street. I think that it is also important to, plan ahead, and that's the other reason we're doing this, that if people have an alternative, that they make their alternative available to them. Now, snow emergency routes, people can still park on both sides of a snow emergency route, and there is actually a lot of snow emergency route in the city. So that is probably going to be people's best option, is to park on those snow emergency routes. Just keeping aware that when there's another snow event, which I am most certain we will have yet again this winter, what we do is that if we need to declare a snow emergency, that would happen. Follow the snow emergency rules. This winter parking restriction temporarily goes off during the snow emergency to be able to allow clearing, and then we go right back into it with the parking on the odd side of the street. That lines up with day 3 of the snow emergency for the rules that are out there. Correct. So the question was, if there's a snow emergency, which most likely there will be, then these winter parking restrictions temporarily are lifted so that people can park back on for the day of the snow, the evening of the snow emergency route. They can park on both sides of an even odd street, and then they have to follow the snow emergency rules, and then we go back to the odd side of the street parking for non-snow emergency routes. So I am just looking back towards Deputy Director Jelly, because he has been here the longest, to see if that has been considered. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. Brett Jelly, Deputy Director of Public Works. I think I'm up here because I've been around for 20 years. The snow emergency rules have been reviewed, or in winter parking restrictions, and actually this morning, if you look back in the archives, in the 70s and 80s, things were even different than they are today. In the early 2000s, there was some work. It was called Snowasis parking lots. There was some work on, I see Casper nodding his head. There was some work on finding some private lots that could be opened up, more so for snow emergencies. Specifically, it wasn't so much about parking restrictions.
And it sounds like they're not being reconsidered now for this situation.
We are not working on that right now.
Yeah. Oh. So the question was, how does it work if you're parked in the wrong place? If you're parked, once the restrictions go in place, 9 p.m. tomorrow night, if you are on the even side of the street, what happens? And, we work with traffic control, which is not in Public Works, but we work closely with traffic control to make sure they are aware of when this goes into effect. I think that, likely there's going to be some good judgment used here about what happens, but I fully think that by the weekend, people can expect that if they are in the wrong spot, they could get a ticket. They could get towed as well to the impound lot. So it's serious that people do need to move their vehicle, and we want to make sure that they're doing that. So the question was, should people call 311 to report a car parked on the wrong side of the street? First, I'm going to say people should call 311 for a number of issues with these parking restrictions. So we know, and I'll get there, we have a number of disability parking spots in the city that residents have. Those residents, if those parking spaces are not on the odd side of the street, but on the even side of the street, we are making accommodation for those disability parkers, and they should call 311 to understand and to also let us know where they're at. That will be very helpful with the disability parking. The other part of your question was about 311 generally. There are 3 really great ways to interact with 311. I just want to say this out loud. Get the app. If you don't have the app, use the app. You can report something or get information almost any time of the day and get the information into 311, because the 311 call center is open 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., I believe, might be 7 p.m., 8 p.m. Monday through Friday. You can also email 311. And emailing 311, we just had a presentation on this in our Public Works Committee by the 311 director. There is no response time difference between these 3 different methods. So if it's a weekend, people can use the app or email in. They can leave a message on the 311 line, and that also will be referenced. But if they need information, getting that call in between today and tomorrow for information, particularly around the disability parking spaces, would be important. I think we always welcome residents' participation in making sure people are following the rules. So, yes. All right. Thanks very much, everyone.